The home serves as a sanctuary guarded by those who promise protection, yet history reveals instances where the threat resides within, wearing a familiar face. When the truth is unbearable, some parents invent a phantom to carry the blame. Why would a protector manufacture a monster to hide their own reflection? The answer began to surface on a silent Oregon road in 1983. On a desolate spring night in 1983, a red Nissan Pulsar cairns into the emergency bay of a Springfield hospital. A mother steps out of the driver's seat, clutching a wounded left forearm, and announces that a bushy-haired stranger flagged them down on a dark, rural road. She claims this unknown phantom opened fire on her 3 children sitting in the back seat. The chaotic emergency room descends into a chilling silence as doctors rush to the vehicle. They look inside the shattered interior and realize the horrifying magnitude of the tragedy waiting in the darkness. The timber town of Springfield, Oregon, sat quiet under the damp canopy of the Pacific Northwest in the early 1980s. The heavy scent of pine needles and the distant hum of lumber mills shaped the daily rhythm of the working-class community. Within this modest town lived 3 young children who shared an unbreakable sibling bond. Christy was 8 years old, a protective older sister who spent her afternoons drawing and looking after her younger siblings. Cheryl was 7 years old, a gentle girl who loved wearing bright dresses and sought approval from the adults around her. Danny was just 3 years old, a toddler full of boundless energy who filled their small home with laughter. They spent their days playing in the wet Oregon grass, trusting the adults in their fragile world. Their entire existence revolved around the safety of their home and the comforting routine of school and play. They had zero idea that a suffocating darkness was taking root inside the mind of their primary caregiver. Diane Downs was a 27-year-old postal worker who had recently relocated the family from Arizona to build a fresh start. To the outside observer, she wore the convincing mask of a resilient single mother fighting to keep her family afloat. She organized their schedules, drove them to school, and maintained the outward illusion of domestic stability. Beneath this constructed facade lay an obsessive and narcissistic personality back in Arizona. She had engaged in an intense affair with a married co-worker named Robert. Robert eventually distanced himself from the turbulent relationship and established a firm boundary. He told her that he had zero desire to be a father or to have children in his daily life. Instead of accepting this rejection and prioritizing her family, she began to view her 3 kids as massive obstacles. She convinced herself that these bright, loving children were the sole barrier standing between her and a perfect romantic future. The geography of the Willamette Valley features long stretches of isolated, unlit roads winding through thick patches of evergreen forests. Old Mohawk Road was one of these remote arteries, a narrow stretch of asphalt flanked by dense vegetation and deep drainage ditches. The sodium streetlights of the city faded into blackness here, leaving only the sweeping beams of vehicle headlights to guide the way. On the evening of May 19, 1983, Diane loaded her 3 children into her red Nissan Pulsar. She told them they were going for a late-night joyride to look at the surrounding countryside. The children wore their comfortable night clothes, settling into the back seats and watching the dark trees roll past the windows. The radio played loud pop music as the car ventured further away from civilization. The heavy metallic click of the car doors locking echoed in the small space. They drove miles out of town into the pitch-black isolation of the rural forest. At 10:45 in the evening, the screeching tires of the Nissan Pulsar shattered the quiet night outside the McKinsey-Willamette Hospital. Diane pulled the car up to the emergency bay, honking the horn to summon the medical staff. Nurses and doctors sprinted through the sliding glass doors, stepping out into the cool spring air to assess the situation. Diane stepped out of the driver's seat with a minor gunshot wound to her left forearm, displaying an unsettling, calm demeanor. She pointed to the back of the small hatchback, prompting the medical team to peer through the rear windows. The interior of the vehicle held a devastating scene of unimaginable tragedy. Cheryl had perished from her severe injuries before the vehicle even reached the hospital parking lot. Christy and Danny clung to their lives, suffering from catastrophic wounds that required aggressive medical intervention. Diane leaned against the side of the car and told the bewildered nurses that a bushy-haired stranger had stepped into the road and attacked them. Detectives from the Lane County Sheriff Office arrived at the bustling emergency room 30 minutes after the initial radio dispatch. They set up a secure perimeter around the red Nissan Tulsa and began documenting the physical state of the vehicle. Investigators expected to find a hysterical, traumatized mother pacing the waiting room in desperate need of psychological support. Instead, they found Diane down sitting in a hospital chair, showing a complete lack of emotional distress. When detectives asked her to recount the events, she described the phantom attacker with detached, clinical precision. The most chilling detail emerged when she requested to go outside and check her car, not to look at her children, but to retrieve her belongings. Officers watched in sheer disbelief as she casually tapped her foot to the rhythm of a pop song playing on a nearby hospital radio. Her heart rate remained steady, and she never once shed a genuine tear for the devastating loss of her middle daughter. This profound absence of maternal grief raised massive internal alarms among the veteran homicide investigators. The next morning, crime scene technicians drove out to Old Mohawk Road to locate the exact spot of the alleged carjacking. The remote stretch of asphalt offered terrible visibility, bordered by towering pine trees and muddy embankments. Technicians cordoned off a wide section of the road and began a painstaking grid search on their hands and knees. They sifted through wet gravel and tall weeds, searching for any physical trace of the bushy-haired stranger. They found 0 footprints in the soft mud, 0 tire skid marks from a sudden stop, and 0 displaced vegetation. Back at the impound lot, forensic specialists dismantled the interior of the Nissan Tulsa to analyze the trajectory of the projectiles. They discovered a profound discrepancy that shattered the story of an outside attacker firing into the driver's side window. The driver's side door panel and the driver's seat contained 0 forensic transfer patterns of any kind. The horrific physical evidence remained confined to the passenger and rear sections of the small hatchback. Despite the glaring forensic inconsistencies, the investigative team had to follow rigid standard protocol regarding the stranger defense. The police department released a composite sketch of the bushy-haired suspect to the regional media, blanketing local television stations with the drawing. A specific tip led them to a local drifter who vaguely matched the physical description and lived in the wooded areas just outside town. Detectives brought this man into an interrogation room, dedicating precious man-hours to running his fingerprints and checking his shaky alibi. The local jurisdiction laws required law enforcement to clear all viable alternate suspects before turning their official focus onto a surviving victim. This strict legal loop created a maddening bottleneck, allowing the true predator to walk free in the community while the system chased a phantom. The drifter proved he was miles away on the night of the attack, leaving the task force right back where they started. Investigators felt immense frustration as they watched Diane grant highly publicized television interviews, playing the role of the grieving mother. She arrogantly manipulated the press, convinced that her fabricated story would outsmart the rural police force. With the phantom suspect cleared, lead investigators pivoted their intense focus toward the specific mechanics of the weapon used in the attack. Technicians searching the floorboards of the Nissan Pulsar recovered a single pristine .22 caliber shell casing hidden under a floor mat. They sent this critical piece of brass to the state crime laboratory to analyze the unique microscopic extractor marks left on the metal. Detectives began deep background checks on Diane, pulling her previous financial records and contacting her former acquaintances in Arizona. They discovered a documented transaction proving she had purchased a .22 caliber Ruger pistol before moving to Oregon. When confronted with this specific purchase record, she claimed she had given the weapon to a random stranger out of state. Officers secured a search warrant for her current Springfield residence and executed a meticulous sweep of her personal belongings. They pried open drawers, sifted through her closets, and documented every item inside her private bedroom. While they never located the physical firearm, they found live .22 caliber ammunition that perfectly matched the brand and type of the casing found in the car. While detectives built their circumstantial case, Christy and Danny lay in the intensive care unit fighting massive physical trauma. Danny remained paralyzed from the waist down, forever robbed of his mobility due to the catastrophic spinal damage. Christy had suffered a severe stroke from her injuries, losing her motor skills and her ability to speak a single word. The psychological horror escalated when the state allowed Diane to routinely visit her severely injured children in the hospital ward. Detectives and nurses observed these visits, noting how the children physically recoiled and exhibited extreme physiological panic whenever she walked into the room. Heart monitors would beep fast, and Christy's eyes would widen with sheer terror at the sight of her own mother. Diane would lean over their beds, whispering in their ears and maintaining a suffocating psychological control over their fragile minds. The medical staff restricted her visiting hours, citing the immense physical stress these encounters placed on the recovering patients. The investigative team knew their entire case hinged on a voiceless 8-year-old girl finding the immense courage to speak the truth. Through continuous grueling sessions of intense physical therapy, Christy began to reclaim her stolen voice. She practiced forming syllables, pushing through immense neurological barriers to communicate with her protective foster family. In early 1984, the local district attorney officially indicted Diane Downs, bringing the dark saga into a tense courtroom. The courtroom was a heavy wood-paneled space filled with skeptical reporters, rigid bailiffs, and an anxious jury. Diane arrived at the defense table heavily pregnant, having intentionally conceived a fourth child to project a maternal, sympathetic image to the jury. Her arrogant smirk remained firmly in place as the prosecution laid out the damning forensic trail of the .22 caliber weapon. The defense pushed the phantom carjacker theory, attempting to cast reasonable doubt on the circumstantial evidence. The entire strategy shattered into dust the moment the prosecution called their star witness to the heavy wooden stand. The heavy courtroom doors swung open and a fragile, traumatized 8-year-old girl slowly wheeled herself into the center of the room. The expansive room fell dead silent as the prosecutor approached the witness stand. He knelt to eye level and asked Christy who had harmed her on that pitch-black road. The young girl did not hesitate for a single second. She raised a trembling hand and pointed her finger directly at the defense table. She bravely declared that her own mother was the one who pulled the trigger. The terrible truth echoed off the heavy oak walls, stripping away the final remnants of the elaborate deception. Diane sat motionless, glaring at her surviving daughter as her pristine maternal mask dissolved. The terrified jury understood that the predator they feared was never a mysterious stranger hiding in the woods. The ultimate betrayal came from the very person tasked with keeping those innocent children safe from the darkness. The overwhelming weight of the forensic evidence and the devastating eyewitness testimony destroyed the defense narrative. In June of 1984, the jury deliberated with fierce conviction, refusing to let a master manipulator escape accountability. They returned to the courtroom and pronounced Diane Downs guilty of all charges, including the brutal attack on her own family. The presiding judge looked down from the bench with disgust. Delivering a sentence meant to ensure she would never walk free again. He handed down a massive penalty of life in prison plus an additional 50 years. This monumental sentence securely locked away a profound threat, ensuring no other child would fall victim to her twisted desires. Her newborn child was removed from her custody by the state, severing her final attempt to use an innocent life as a shield. She was escorted out of the courtroom in heavy iron chains, her arrogant smirk erased by the crushing reality of a concrete cell. She remains incarcerated behind reinforced steel doors to this very day, repeatedly denied parole by officials who recognize her lack of remorse. While the perpetrator vanished into the dark corridors of the penal system, a beautiful story of genuine redemption blossomed for the surviving victims. Fred Hughey, the lead prosecutor who spent sleepless nights fighting for justice in the courtroom, could not walk away from the broken family. He and his wife legally adopted Christy and Danny, bringing them into a peaceful home filled with the unconditional love they had always deserved. They provided immense physical and emotional support, helping the resilient siblings rebuild their shattered lives far away from the public spectacle. Christy grew up to attend college, while Danny adapted to his physical challenges with an incredibly strong spirit. Their inspiring journey stands as a powerful testament to the enduring strength of the human will to overcome unimaginable betrayal. Unfortunately, the haunting phenomenon of a parent using a fictional carjacker to mask an unthinkable domestic betrayal did not end in the damp forests of Oregon. Just 1 decade later, the entire nation would find itself paralyzed by another tearful mother sitting in front of television cameras, spinning an eerily identical web of horrific lies. In the late fall of 1994, a tearful mother dominates national television screens. She begs a mystery attacker to return her 2 young boys. The nation watches in collective heartbreak as she describes an armed assailant forcing her out of her vehicle. She claims this phantom drove off into the night with her children strapped in the back seat. The cameras capture a desperate plea from a grieving parent facing every family's worst nightmare. Then, the facade begins to crack under the weight of forensic truth. Union, South Carolina, sits nestled in the foothills of the Piedmont region. It is a quiet mill town defined by long stretches of 2-lane highways and dense pine forests. The community revolves around Main Street, storefronts, local churches, and a shared sense of safety. Residents know their neighbors, and front doors often remain unlocked throughout the day. Into this setting, 23-year-old Susan Smith attempted to build a life for her family. She navigated a turbulent, publicized separation from her husband, David Smith. Together, they shared custody of 2 beloved boys. 3-year-old Michael possessed a bright smile and loved playing with his toy trucks. 14-month-old Alex was just learning to walk and relied on his mother for care and comfort. Those who knew the boys described them as the center of their extended family's universe. Susan maintained a seemingly ordinary daily routine, balancing work and motherhood in the public eye. She worked at the local Winn-Dixie supermarket, checking out groceries and chatting with town residents. Behind the veneer of a struggling but dedicated single mother, a darker psychological dynamic took shape. Susan engaged in an intense, secret affair with Tom Findlay. He was the son of a prominent, wealthy local business owner. This relationship offered Susan a glimpse into a life of financial security and elevated social status. She desired to escape the mundane struggles of her current domestic situation. However, Tom did not share her vision of a blended family future. He harbored no desire to take on the responsibility of raising another man's young children. The romantic illusion shattered in mid-October of 1994. Tom delivered a devastating breakup letter to Susan, laying out his terms with absolute clarity. He stated that her children were the primary obstacle to any future relationship between them. This rejection struck at the core of Susan's deep-seated fear of abandonment and need for validation. Instead of prioritizing her sons, she viewed them through a distorted lens of resentment. The boys transformed from cherished children into heavy anchors, tying her to an unwanted life. She kept the breakup letter hidden inside her home, projecting a normal facade to her family. The psychological toll of this rejection began to warp her perception of reality. The quiet streets of Union provided no warning for the horror gathering just out of sight. On the evening of October 25, 1994, the calm of Union shattered. Around 9 o'clock, Susan ran up to a rural house on the outskirts of town, pounding on the door. She gasped for air, crying out that an unknown man had stolen her car. According to her narrative, she stopped her 1990 Mazda Protegé at a red light at the Monarch Mills intersection. This intersection sat at the junction of Highway 49 and a quiet industrial road. She claimed a man forced his way into the passenger seat and demanded she drive. She told police he ordered her out of the car on a dark stretch of road. Susan insisted the assailant drove away with Michael and Alex still strapped in their car seats. The local police department mobilized every available officer to scour the surrounding rural routes. Dispatchers broadcast the description of the 1990 burgundy Mazda Protegé across state lines. The entire town of Union rallied behind the grieving mother, organizing massive search parties. Volunteers combed through thick brush, abandoned barns, and desolate highway ditches with flashlights. National media outlets descended upon the small town, broadcasting Susan's tearful pleas into millions of living rooms. She appeared on camera multiple times, holding her husband David's hand and sobbing. The public saw a traumatized mother, unaware of the deception playing out on screen. The description Susan provided of the attacker triggered a deep systemic issue within the region. She pointed fingers at an unknown black man wearing a knit cap and a plaid shirt. This fabricated detail ignited racial tensions and shifted the focus of law enforcement onto innocent citizens. Police set up roadblocks, stopping and questioning countless drivers who matched the vague profile. The investigation poured immense resources into chasing a phantom, stalling actual progress for days. Real suspects and concrete evidence took a back seat to a narrative built on stereotypes and panic. The community remained paralyzed by fear, believing a violent carjacker roamed their quiet streets. Meanwhile, the clock ticked down on the critical first 48 hours of a missing persons investigation. Sheriff Howard Wells of the Union County Sheriff's Office took the helm of the massive investigation. He requested assistance from the State Law Enforcement Division and the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Federal agents set up a command center in the town, processing hundreds of tips pouring in from across the country. Divers waded into the murky, cold waters of several local lakes, including John D. Long Lake. They swept the muddy bottoms with sonar equipment, searching for any trace of the burgundy Mazda. However, early search efforts at the lake yielded nothing. As the initial sweep missed the deepest sections, day after day, law enforcement chased down false leads, interviewing gas station attendants and truck drivers. They reviewed security footage from nearby stores, hoping to catch a glimpse of the stolen vehicle passing by. The absence of a single eyewitness at a major intersection during the evening hours began to raise serious questions. Investigators shifted their focus to the precise mechanics of Susan's timeline and geographical claims. The Monarch Mills intersection featured a traffic light controlled by a vehicle-activated sensor pad. During the late evening hours, the light on Susan's side would only turn red if cross-traffic triggered the mechanism. Detectives requested traffic data for that specific time and found zero records of cross-traffic. No other vehicles occupied the intersection at 9 o'clock that night to force Susan to stop. This logistical impossibility served as the first major crack in her carefully constructed narrative. The phantom carjacker could not have entered the car at a red light because the light was green. Sheriff Wells kept this crucial piece of forensic intelligence hidden from the public and from Susan. He instructed his team to let the grieving mother continue talking, waiting for her story to unravel further. Federal profilers began analyzing Susan's behavior during her publicized press conferences. They noted a distinct lack of genuine tears and a focus on her own suffering rather than the well-being of Michael and Alex. Her language patterns distanced her from the boys, referring to them in the past tense long before any outcome was known. To apply pressure, investigators requested Susan undergo a series of polygraph examinations. During the first test, the examiner noted deceptive reactions whenever he mentioned the boy's location. Susan attributed her erratic baseline to the severe emotional distress of losing her children. However, a subsequent polygraph test confirmed the deception, indicating she held direct knowledge of the car's whereabouts. The protective shield of the grieving mother narrative began to disintegrate under the weight of scientific scrutiny. The turning point arrived when FBI agents executed a search warrant at Susan's residence. Amidst the mundane clutter of a family home, they uncovered the breakup letter from Tom Findlay. The document detailed his refusal to engage in a relationship involving children. Investigators recognized this letter as a massive psychological trigger, providing a clear, devastating motive. The narrative shifted from a random act of violence to a calculated internal threat. Detectives realized the perpetrator hid not in the shadows of a dark highway, but within the walls of the family home. The phantom assailant served merely as a shield, deflecting blame while exploiting societal fears. Sheriff Wells prepared to confront Susan with the overwhelming physical and psychological evidence. The interrogation room at the Union County Sheriff's Office felt small, sterile, and suffocating. On the 9th day of the search, Sheriff Wells sat directly across from Susan. He presented the failed polygraph results, the traffic light sensor data, and the breakup letter. He dismantled her timeline, cornering her in a maze of her own lies. Susan attempted to maintain the carjacker story, but her responses grew frantic and contradictory. The sheriff used a tactical approach, speaking softly and appealing to her sense of religious guilt. He suggested an impending emotional collapse, urging her to relieve the burden she carried. The relentless pressure of undeniable facts shattered the remaining fragments of her defensive mask. On November 3, 1994, the vats collapsed inside the interrogation room. Susan broke down, her shoulders shaking, and admitted the phantom carjacker never existed. She revealed the chilling reality of what transpired on the night of October 25th. Instead of driving home, she steered her 1990 Mazda Protegé toward John D. Long Lake. The lake sat isolated, surrounded by dense trees devoid of streetlights or witnesses. She parked the vehicle on the concrete boat ramp facing the dark, still water. Michael and Alex remained strapped into their heavy car seats in the back. Susan stepped out of the driver's side door and released the parking brake. She stood on the edge of the boat ramp and watched the vehicle inch forward. The front tires breached the water's surface, pulling the heavy engine block downward. The car floated for an extended period before the cabin filled with water. She listened to the muffled sounds disappearing beneath the surface, ensuring the boys possessed no chance of escape. The profound silence of the lake replaced the lives of two innocent children. She then turned her back on the water and ran down the dark road to begin her performance. Following the confession, search and rescue divers returned to John Long Lake with exact coordinates. They plunged into the freezing depths and located the burgundy Mazda submerged upside down in 100 feet of water. Divers made the grim discovery of Michael and Alex, still fastened into their respective car seats. The recovery operation sent shockwaves of grief and rage through the tight-knit town of Union. The community felt betrayed, having poured their hearts into searching for a non-existent attacker. Law enforcement faced immense public scrutiny, but the meticulous, evidence-driven interrogation secured an airtight case. The justice system prepared to hold the true perpetrator accountable for her unfathomable actions. The trial commenced in 1995, drawing a massive national audience demanding strict accountability. Prosecutors presented the breakup letter, the traffic light logs, and the damning polygraph results as a mountain of undeniable proof. The defense attempted to paint a picture of severe mental distress, arguing a temporary loss of sanity. However, the jury saw a calculated, deceptive individual who orchestrated an elaborate cover-up. The court convicted Susan of 2 counts of taking a life in the first degree. The jury spared her the death penalty, delivering a sentence of life behind bars. The verdict provided a measure of legal closure, though the emotional scars on the town of Union remained permanent. For decades, the perpetrator remained locked away within the South Carolina Department of Corrections. In November 2024, after serving the mandatory 30 years, she appeared before a parole board for the first time. The board denied her request for release, citing the sheer gravity of her actions and her disciplinary record behind bars. Michael and Alex rest side by side in a local cemetery, their memories preserved by a family that refuses to let them fade. The justice system held firm, ensuring the concrete walls of a prison cell remain her permanent reality. Yet, the betrayal of innocent life by a trusted caretaker pales in comparison to the horror found inside a Fort Bragg military apartment. Flashlights cut through the frigid, rain-swept darkness of early morning North Carolina. Military police officers sprint toward a brick duplex on Castle Drive. They push through the unlocked front door and enter a scene of staggering devastation. A green beret surgeon lies on the floor next to his expectant wife, clutching a small, non-fatal wound on his torso. He points a trembling finger toward the pitch-black hallway leading to the bedrooms. Through ragged breaths, he whispers a terrifying tale of shadowy intruders chanting strange mantras in the dark. The nightmare that unfolded inside this pristine military base will haunt the nation for the next 50 years. The year is 1970, a time when Fort Bragg serves as a bustling center of American military power. Thousands of soldiers prepare for deployment within this stalling, secure federal reservation. Deep inside the base sits Castle Drive, a quiet residential street lined with identical brick duplexes. Uniformed men mow their lawns while children ride tricycles along the concrete sidewalks. At Unit 544, Captain Jeffrey McDonald lives a life that appears perfect to his neighbors. He is a Princeton-educated doctor, a proud Green Beret, and the head of a beautiful young family. His wife, Colette, radiates warmth and devotes her entire existence to her family. She is 26 years old and prepares for the arrival of her 3rd child. Colette balances the demanding life of a military spouse with taking evening classes at a local college. She harbors dreams of finishing her degree and teaching elementary school children. Her world revolves around her 2 young daughters, 5-year-old Kimberly and 2-year-old Kristen. Kimberly is a bright, independent child who spends hours drawing pictures for her parents. Kristen, the youngest, possesses a gentle spirit and relies on her older sister for guidance. The girls share an inseparable bond, spending their days playing together in the narrow, carpeted hallway of their military housing unit. Colette spends her afternoons sewing clothes for the girls and preparing their modest home for the new baby. To the outside world, the McDonald family embodies the ultimate ideal of American success and stability. No one peering through their pristine living room window could ever predict the darkness lurking behind the heavy wooden front door. The layout of the apartment at 544 Castle Drive is simple and compact. The front door opens straight into a tidy living room that connects to a small dining area and kitchen. A single narrow hallway leads off the living room, branching into a master bedroom on the left and 2 smaller bedrooms on the right. On the evening of February 16, Colette leaves for her evening class while Jeffrey stays home with the girls. Colette returns hours later, kisses her daughters goodnight, and climbs into the master bed. The base falls silent as heavy rain begins to pound against the aluminum window frames. At 3:42 in the morning, an emergency dispatcher receives a frantic, muffled call through the base switchboard. A man's voice begs for an ambulance, claiming his home is under attack. Military police arrive at the address and find the front door unlocked. They discover Jeffrey McDonald lying next to the lifeless body of Colette in the master bedroom. The officers move down the hallway and make a grim discovery inside the children's rooms. Both Kimberly and Kristen have met a brutal, permanent end in their own beds. MacDonald tells the military police that he fell asleep on the living room couch. He claims he woke up to find 3 men standing over him in the darkness. According to his account, a woman wearing a floppy hat stood nearby, holding a candle and chanting terrifying phrases about acid and rain. He insists these intruders overpowered him, knocked him unconscious, and targeted his sleeping family. The immediate aftermath of the emergency call triggers a catastrophic failure in crime scene preservation. Dozens of military personnel trample through the tiny apartment without logging their movements or wearing protective gear. Medics rush into the living room, disturbing the furniture and destroying potential footprint evidence in the entryway. An officer attempts to revive Colette, inadvertently transferring trace materials across the master bedroom. The Criminal Investigation Division takes control of the scene but lacks the resources for a complex forensic sweep. Investigators fail to dust the exterior doors for fingerprints before the morning rain washes the surfaces clean. They also fail to secure the neighborhood perimeter, allowing curious neighbors to wander near the open windows. This rigid, disorganized military protocol destroys crucial forensic baselines right from the very first hour. Investigators begin a methodical reconstruction of the living room where the primary struggle allegedly occurred. MacDonald insists he fought for his life against 3 strong men while wearing his blue Pamjaw top. Yet, detectives observe an environment untouched by violence. A pile of Valentine cards sits balanced on a small table near the couch. A heavy, precarious flower pot remains undisturbed on a low shelf just inches from where the fight supposedly happened. Furthermore, MacDonald claims he used his pajama top to block a barrage of attacks. Forensic analysts find 48 distinct puncture holes in the fabric of this garment. However, MacDonald sustained only one small, localized wound to his chest, making the defensive narrative impossible. The search team moves outside and steps into the soggy backyard behind the duplex. Near the back door, they locate 3 items hidden beneath a large bush. They document a piece of wood, a kitchen utility instrument, and a specialized ice-crushing tool. Detectives trace the origins of these items back to the MacDonald household inventory. The piece of wood matches the grain and paint of a bed slat from Kimberly's room. The ice-crushing tool matches the set kept in the family kitchen. Inside the house, technicians collect tiny blue fibers scattered across the bedrooms. These specific threads come from the torn blue pajunja top worn by the captain. Crucially, they find a massive cluster of these fibers trapped beneath the body of Colette, proving the garment tore before she fell. In the spring of 1970, the Army convenes a military hearing under Article 32 to determine if MacDonald should face a court-martial. The defense team exploits the catastrophic crime scene preservation to introduce profound, reasonable doubt. They bring forward Helena Stokely, a local drug user known to wander the streets of Fayetteville wearing a floppy hat. Stokely thrives on attention and offers vague, contradictory statements suggesting she might hold knowledge of the crime. The defense points to her bizarre behavior as absolute proof that the chanting intruders truly existed. The military hearing officer cites the compromised crime scene and dismisses the charges against the captain. MacDonald receives an honorable discharge, packs his bags, and relocates to California to start a lucrative new medical practice. He assumes the uniform of an ordinary successful civilian, escaping justice through a massive bureaucratic loophole. The case file gathers dust in military archives while MacDonald enjoys his newfound freedom on the West Coast. However, Colette's stepfather, Freddie Kashab, refuses to let the memories of his daughter and grandchildren fade into obscurity. Kashab obtains a massive multi-volume transcript of the military hearing and begins reading every single page. He maps out the forensic details, the layout of the bedrooms, and the timeline of the emergency call. He realizes the impossibility of MacDonald's story and begins a relentless public campaign against his former son-in-law. Kashab files civilian complaints, hounds federal prosecutors, and writes letters to members of Congress demanding action. His unyielding pressure forces the Justice Department to convene a federal grand jury in 1974. Federal prosecutors use new civilian forensic experts to re-examine the original blue Panama top and the wooden bed slat. They slowly rebuild a prosecution focused on blood typing, fiber distribution, and the immutable laws of physics. The federal trial finally begins in 1979 in Raleigh, North Carolina. Prosecutors walk the jury through the exact sequence of events that fatal night. They demonstrate that the horrific attack started in the master bedroom with a fatal domestic rage directed at Coltate. The evidence proves MacDonald then struck his older daughter before attempting to stage a chaotic crime scene. To prove their theory, the prosecution brings the torn Panama top into the courtroom. They fold the garment over a mannequin to replicate how MacDonald claimed he held it defensively. They insert rods through the 48 puncture holes, showing the jury an undeniable pattern. The rods align straight, proving the shirt remained stationary and folded when struck, not flailing in a chaotic struggle. The prosecution then turns their focus to the psychological profile of the man sitting at the defense table. They paint a picture of an arrogant, deceptive individual obsessed with his own pristine image. They highlight how MacDonald read an article about high-profile cult crimes just days before the tragedy. He intentionally staged the crime scene to mimic these sensationalized stories, believing his status as a decorated doctor would shield him from scrutiny. The defense attempts to call Helena Stokely to the stand to revive the intruder theory. However, Stokely testifies under oath that she was never inside the house and had zero involvement. The jury sees right through the facade of the brilliant surgeon who thought he was smarter than the forensic analysts. The terrifying realization washes over the courtroom that this monster lived among them, wearing the mask of an ordinary, respectable professional. On August 29, 1979, the jury returns from their final deliberations. The foreman reads the verdict aloud, finding Jeffrey MacDonald guilty of the fatal attacks on his family. The judge hands down 3 consecutive life sentences, ensuring the arrogant surgeon will never walk free again. Freddie Kaz weeps quietly in the gallery, finally securing justice for Colette, Kimberly, and Kristen after 9 grueling years. MacDonald files appeals for the next 5 decades, continuously demanding new DNA testing and alternative suspect theories. Federal courts examine every new petition, and every single time they uphold the original conviction based on the mountain of physical evidence. Today, he remains secured behind the walls of a federal penitentiary in Maryland, an elderly man stripped of his medals and prestige. The tragedy on Castle Drive exposed a chilling truth about the monsters hiding behind white picket fences. The system eventually caught up to the arrogant doctor, but he is far from the only parent to point a finger at the shadows. Sometimes the most terrifying deception occurs not in the dark of night, but under the blinding lights of suburban Texas. We move forward 2 decades to another immaculate home where a mother's desperate cries for help mask a dark secret. The crime scene tapes show an intruder's trail, but the microscopic evidence tells a different story. Detectives will soon unravel a web of lies surrounding a discarded kitchen knife and a hidden towel. Let us examine the frantic emergency call and the chilling aftermath of a night that stole the future of 2 innocent boys. A frantic 911 call pierces the silence of the early morning hours, capturing a mother screaming into the receiver. She claims a mysterious man dressed entirely in dark clothing has just broken into her Texas home and brutally attacked her family. Paramedics rush into the expansive suburban living room, expecting to find a chaotic crime scene left by a fleeing phantom. Instead, they find the mother pressing a towel to her own neck, while a crimson-stained kitchen blade rests ominously on the nearby counter. The nightmare inside the house has already ended, but the deception has only just begun. The wealthy enclave of Rowlett, Texas, in the mid-1990s represented the pinnacle of American suburban achievement. Eagle Drive stretched out under the warm glow of sodium streetlights, lined with manicured lawns and towering two-story brick facades. The heavy Texas heat settled over the neighborhood each evening, accompanied by the deafening hum of cicadas. Driveways featured expensive luxury vehicles. Children left their bicycles on the sidewalks without a second thought. Residents felt insulated from the grit and danger of the sprawling Dallas metropolis located miles away. Security systems remained deactivated. Front doors often sat unlocked behind decorative glass panels. The Reuter family home at 5801 Eagle Drive projected this exact image of flawless domestic tranquility. Inside this sprawling home lived two young brothers, 6-year-old Devin and 5-year-old Damon. The boys filled the vast rooms with the chaotic energy of childhood. They spent their afternoons riding miniature motorized cars across the concrete driveway. Devin possessed a gentle, protective nature toward his younger sibling. Damon shadowed his older brother, eager to participate in every backyard adventure. Their bedrooms overflowed with plush toys, building blocks, and the simple treasures of adolescence. They relied entirely on the adults in their lives for safety, nourishment, and love. The boys viewed their sprawling suburban environment as an infinite playground. They went to sleep each night assuming the morning would bring another day of carefree exploration. Their parents, Darlie and Darren Reuter, worked relentlessly to maintain their affluent status. Darren ran a local electronics testing business, while Darlie focused on raising the children and cultivating an image of wealth. They purchased expensive jewelry, took luxury vacations, and drove high-end sports cars. Beneath this polished exterior, a massive financial sinkhole threatened to swallow the family. The electronics business experienced a severe downturn, causing revenues to plummet. Bank loans piled up on the kitchen counter. Credit card debt spiraled beyond their capacity to pay the minimum balances. The couple faced the very real prospect of losing their home, their vehicles, and their social standing in the wealthy community. The pressure cooker of financial ruin began to fracture the foundation of their suburban dream. The night of June 5, 1996, brought a suffocating humidity to the quiet streets of Rowlett. The vast house on Eagle Drive fell silent as the family settled into their evening routines. Darine retreated to the second-floor master bedroom, taking the couple's infant son Drake upstairs to sleep. Darlie chose to remain downstairs in the expansive family room. She set up a makeshift bed on the floor, bringing Devin and Damon down to sleep beside the television. The television glow cast shifting shadows across the white carpet. Heavy wooden doors sealed the home from the outside world. The spatial divide placed the father on the upper level, entirely separated from the events about to unfold on the ground floor. The neighborhood remained still completely unaware of the nightmare brewing behind the brick facade. At exactly 2:31 in the morning, the silence shattered. A frantic call connected to the local 911 dispatch center. The dispatcher heard Darlie screaming into the receiver, her voice echoing with panic and raw terror. She claimed a mystery intruder wearing dark clothes and a baseball cap had broken into the family room. According to her narrative, this phantom attacker descended upon her and the two young boys as they slept. She described a chaotic struggle in the dark. She told the operator the man dropped a weapon on the kitchen counter before fleeing through the garage. paramedics and patrol units rushed toward Eagle Drive. Their sirens tearing through the quiet suburban night. Officers kicked through the front entrance and encountered a scene of absolute devastation. The vast family room resembled a battlefield. 6-year-old Devon had already succumbed to massive fatal injuries before medical personnel could even open their trauma kits. 5-year-old Damon clung to a faint pulse, his small body bearing the marks of a brutal, relentless assault. Paramedics worked desperately on the white carpet, but Damon faded away just moments after they arrived. Darlie paced the kitchen area, pressing a white towel to her own neck. A long, sharp kitchen blade rested beside the sink, coated in crimson evidence. First responders rushed Darlie to the hospital to treat a laceration on her throat, leaving investigators to secure the expansive 2-story house. The mystery of the dark-clad intruder now consumed the entire local police force. Rowlett police officers established a massive perimeter around the neighborhood within minutes. Patrol cars blocked every intersection leading away from Eagle Drive. Officers swept the backyards with heavy flashlights, casting long beams across wooden fences and manicured hedges. Canine units arrived to track the scent of the escaping suspect. The dogs circled the perimeter of the home but failed to pick up any trail leading into the surrounding streets. Neighbors awoke to the flashing lights, stepping onto their porches in absolute disbelief. The fear of a random, violent home invader sent shockwaves through the wealthy enclave. Despite the rapid response and the intense search grid, law enforcement found zero trace of a fleeing suspect. The humid Texas night yielded no muddy footprints, no discarded clothing, and no desperate runaway. Inside the house, crime scene technicians began a meticulous spatial mapping of the entire ground floor. Detectives focused on the utility room and the garage, the exact path Darlie claimed the attacker used to escape. They found a large slash in the fiberglass screen of a garage window. This cut appeared to validate the story of an outside break-in. However, the lead investigator noticed a glaring physical contradiction on the windowsill itself. A thick, undisturbed layer of dirt and dust coated the bottom ledge of the window frame. Delicate spider webs remained perfectly intact in the corners of the opening. A wooden flower box sat outside the window, its fragile plants showing absolutely no signs of being crushed or disturbed. No human being could have climbed through that window without leaving a physical disruption in the dust. The forensic analysis of the fiberglass window screen revealed an even more damning truth. Technicians placed the cut fibers under high-powered microscopes at the State Crime Laboratory. The microscopic fraying of the fiberglass threads proved the screen was slashed from the inside of the garage, pushing outward. The crimson-stained blade found on the kitchen counter matched the family's own knife block perfectly. There were no foreign fingerprints on the handle, no unknown DNA on the grip. Detectives found a single clean bread knife missing from the block, later discovering it hidden away, bearing microscopic traces of fiberglass dust. The physical evidence pointed directly to a calculated staging of the break-in. The phantom attacker had used the tools already present inside the home to manufacture the illusion of a home invasion. Blood spatter analysts mapped the red drops scattered across the kitchen floor. The patterns told a contradictory silent story. The drops near the sink indicated that the person holding the weapon stood perfectly still while bleeding, rather than fleeing in a panic. The kitchen sink basin revealed traces of a frantic cleanup, showing someone had washed their hands before placing the weapon on the counter. A large upright vacuum cleaner stood in the middle of the kitchen floor. The wheels of the vacuum cleaner had rolled directly through wet crimson stains, yet the machine had been turned off and placed upright. This physical staging required deliberate conscious effort in the immediate aftermath of the violence. The entire sequence of events constructed a narrative that completely defied Darlie's chaotic account of a sudden, dark struggle. Medical examiners scrutinized the specific nature of the injuries inflicted that night. The wounds on the two young boys demonstrated a horrific, forceful intent, designed to cause immediate devastation. In stark contrast, the laceration on Darley's neck told a different medical story. The blade had carefully sliced the surface of the skin, stopping just millimeters shy of the vital carotid artery. Experts classified this specific type of cut as a classic hesitation wound, commonly seen when individuals inflict injuries upon themselves. Furthermore, audio engineers enhanced the frantic 911 recording. The background audio captured the distinct sound of the kitchen sink running and cabinets opening while Darley supposedly fought for her life. The timeline pieced together by investigators left absolutely no room for an unknown intruder to enter, attack, stage the scene, and vanish into the night. Despite the mounting forensic evidence, the police faced significant legal hurdles. Darley remained a grieving mother in the eyes of the public and the media. Detectives knew they could not afford a single procedural mistake or a rushed arrest. They conducted hours of interviews with Darren and Darley, carefully documenting her shifting narratives. The affluent community of Rowlett descended into paranoia, with residents purchasing heavy deadbolts and complex alarm systems to fend off the imaginary predator. Investigators worked in absolute silence, refusing to leak their findings to the desperate local press. They cross-referenced every fiber, every red drop, and every microscopic piece of dust. The legal system demanded an airtight case to overcome the inherent bias of a mother accused of the unthinkable. The tension in the town reached a boiling point as days passed without a suspect in custody. June 14, 1996 marked exactly 8 days since the horrific events on Eagle Drive. The local cemetery hosted a gathering to commemorate what would have been Devon's 7th birthday. Local news crews set up their heavy cameras on the grass, expecting to capture a somber memorial service. The Rudier family arrived, surrounded by friends and supporters. The mood shifted entirely upon their approach to the fresh earth. The cameras rolled, capturing a scene that defied all human logic and parental grief. Darley stood at the head of the gravesite. She wore a bright smile. She laughed loudly with the attendees chewing gum and displaying an unnerving lack of sorrow. She produced several cans of bright neon, silly string. She sprayed the synthetic webbing all over the fresh earth resting above her two sons. She danced around the memorial, singing cheerful birthday songs. The local news broadcast this footage straight into the living rooms of the terrified Texas community. The public mask slipped, completely revealing a chilling emotional void. The collective sympathy of the nation evaporated in a single television broadcast, as the community realized they were watching a predator celebrate her own handiwork. 4 days later, on June 18, investigators finally moved in. Officers executed the arrest warrant, arriving at the home to take Darley into custody. The meticulously constructed facade of the innocent, traumatized victim crumbled instantly. She was placed in heavy steel handcuffs and escorted into the back of a waiting patrol car. The realization hit the local residents with devastating force. The terrifying monster that haunted their suburban nightmares never broke through a window. The monster had lived inside the home all along, reading bedtime stories and tucking the boys in before stealing their futures. The hunt for the phantom intruder ended precisely where it began. The trial commenced in early 1997, drawing intense national scrutiny. The prosecution presented the mountain of undeniable forensic evidence to the jury. They laid out the severed fiberglass screen, the undisturbed window dust, and the pristine hesitation wounds on the mother's neck. The state demonstrated exactly how the financial collapse of the household drove a materialistic parent to erase her own family. The defense team struggled to invent alternative theories, attempting to blame the botched initial police walkthrough. They could not explain the vacuum cleaner wheels or the washed sink basin. The cold, hard physical evidence neutralized every emotional appeal made by the defense. The jury deliberated with absolute focus, analyzing the step-by-step destruction of the intruder theory. They returned to the courtroom and delivered a definitive verdict. The jury found Darlie Routier guilty of taking the life of 5-year-old Damon. The judge, bound by the rigid laws of the Texas Penal Code, handed down the ultimate punishment. He sentenced her to death by lethal injection. The gavel fell, cementing her fate behind the thick concrete walls of the state penitentiary. The entire legal proceeding delivered a harsh, uncompromising measure of justice for the 2 boys who perished on the white carpet. Decades later, Darlie remains confined to a small cell on Texas death row. She continues to file massive legal appeals, while her remaining supporters cling to the shattered illusion of her innocence. Devon and Damon rest permanently in the earth, their boundless childhood potential extinguished by the very person obligated to protect them. The case left a permanent scar on the American consciousness, proving that absolute terror can hide behind a manicured suburban lawn. The community of Rowlett never truly recovered from the profound betrayal of trust. Far across the ocean, another desperate parent would soon attempt a remarkably similar deception, using a roaring house fire to mask a calculated theatrical sacrifice of his own offspring. On May 16, 2012, a devastated father faces a sea of television cameras in Derby, England. He grips a crumpled tissue, sobbing uncontrollably as he begs the public to help find the mysterious attacker who destroyed his family. He presents himself as a grieving victim of a targeted malicious arson attack orchestrated by a bitter enemy. Behind the dramatic tears and frantic pleas for justice hides a chilling reality. Victory Road curves gently through the Allenton neighborhood of Derby, England. Narrow brick houses sit shoulder to shoulder under the glow of amber street lamps. This working-class estate provided a quiet backdrop for the chaotic household at number 18. Inside this cramped council property lived a sprawling, unconventional family structure orchestrated by a man named Michael Philpott. The true heart of this home, however, rested entirely with the children. Jade, John, Jack, Jesse, Jaden, and Duane filled the tiny rooms with endless energy. They spent their afternoons playing on the small patch of front lawn or chasing each other down the narrow pavement. Neighbors often heard their laughter echoing through the thin walls of the adjoining houses. These 6 siblings relied completely on the adults in their lives for safety and stability. They went to sleep each night trusting that their home would remain a secure fortress against the outside world. Their father controlled every aspect of the household with an iron grip. Michael Philpott commanded local notoriety long before the tragedy struck. He spent years exploiting the social welfare system, treating his sprawling family as a calculated revenue stream. Local authorities repeatedly approved excessive housing benefits, allowing him to maintain a bizarre domestic arrangement. He lived under one roof with his wife Mayred and his live-in mistress, Lisa Willis. Social workers and housing officials frequently visited the property but ignored the glaring psychological coercion happening in plain sight. Rigid bureaucratic protocols prevented caseworkers from intervening in the highly toxic environment. Michael dictated the daily movements, finances, and interactions of both women. He presented himself to the local press as an eccentric, misunderstood patriarch. Beneath this public mask hid a deeply insecure manipulator who demanded absolute obedience from everyone inside the brick walls of number 18. The fragile ecosystem inside the house shattered in February of 2012. Lisa Willis finally broke free from the psychological cage and moved out of the property. She took her own children with her, severing a major portion of the household income. This departure struck a devastating blow to the fragile ego of the controlling patriarch. Michael lost both his financial leverage and his absolute dominion over the women. He immediately initiated a bitter custody dispute to force her return. The tension festered for months as legal proceedings loomed closer on the calendar. On the evening of May 10, the remaining family members went to sleep in their usual rooms. The 6 children settled into the upstairs bedrooms, completely unaware of the dark scheme unfolding downstairs. Michael harbored a deep obsession with punishing his former mistress and reclaiming his lost control. The layout of number 18 Victory Road featured a narrow front hallway leading directly to a steep wooden staircase. These stairs served as the only viable exit for anyone sleeping on the upper floor. In the early morning hours of May 11, 2012, a dark figure approached the front door. Liquid petrol poured through the small rectangular letterbox, soaking into the hallway carpet. A single spark ignited the fumes, sending a fierce wall of heat roaring up the stairwell. Thick, toxic smoke filled the confined spaces within seconds, creating an inescapable trap. Neighbors awoke to the sounds of shattering glass and frantic shouts echoing down the street. Fire crews arrived to find the front of the council house consumed by a raging inferno. Michael Philpott stood on the pavement outside, putting on a dramatic display of despair. He immediately pointed his finger at his absent ex-mistress, claiming she sent a mystery attacker to destroy his family. Derbyshire police launched an exhaustive search for the supposed phantom arsonist. Investigators crawled off the charred remains of the property and began sifting through the debris. Fire forensic teams analyzed the burn patterns near the melted front door. They detected distinct traces of a specific type of unleaded petrol poured directly through the letterbox. Detectives scoured hours of local security camera footage, searching for anyone fleeing the neighborhood. The cameras captured the glow of the flames but showed zero evidence of any strange individuals approaching or leaving the house. Officers knocked on dozens of doors, interviewing neighbors who witnessed the chaotic aftermath. A glaring discrepancy soon emerged regarding the physical condition of the grieving father. Michael discarded no significant burns and lacked the heavy soot stains expected from someone who fought through a burning hallway. His dramatic recounting of attempting to rescue the children contradicted the physical evidence left at the scene. 5 days after the Blaze police organized a public press conference, Michael sat before an array of television cameras, sobbing loudly into a crumpled tissue. He begged the public to help catch the invisible perpetrator who shattered his life. Seasoned detectives watched the broadcast and noticed the hollow, theatrical nature of his grief. His tears appeared forced, and his underlying demeanor suggested a man more concerned with his public image than his profound loss. Investigators realized they needed to penetrate the tight circle of secrecy surrounding the parents. Authorities relocated Michael and Marie to a local hotel, supposedly to protect them from further attacks. In reality, this room served as a highly controlled trap designed to capture their private conversations. Surveillance experts planted hidden microphones inside the walls and light fixtures of the hotel suite. The detectives retreated to a secure listening post, waiting patiently for the grieving facade to crack. The covered recording devices captured hours of chilling, hushed conversations between the husband and wife. Instead of mourning their loss, the couple obsessed over police interview techniques and evidence collection. Michael repeatedly instructed Mary on what details she needed to withhold from the detectives. He chased demands for her to keep their story straight regarding the events leading up to the blaze. The microphones picked up discussions about a close family friend named Paul Mosley. Investigators cross-referenced this name and discovered Mosley visited the property just hours before the ignition. Police hauled Mosley into the interrogation room where his rigid, rehearsed alibi immediately raised red flags. Detectives applied immense pressure, presenting him with inconsistencies in his timeline. The investigation team mapped the movements of all 3 adults during the early hours of May 11. The phantom attacker theory dissolved completely as the forensic net closed around the people inside the house. Forensic scientists turned their attention to the clothing worn by the 3 suspects on the night of the tragedy. Lab technicians conducted gas chromatography tests on the garments seized during the initial response. They found microscopic traces of the exact same unleaded petrol on the clothing of Michael, Myred, and Paul Mosley. These chemical signatures directly matched the accelerant recovered from the melted carpet in the front hallway. The physical evidence proved undeniably that the trio handled the fuel right before the inferno consumed the home. Detectives then examined the legal calendar and discovered a crucial scheduled event. Michael faced a family court hearing regarding the custody of Lisa Willis's children on the very morning of the blaze. His motive crystallized into a horrifying picture of calculated manipulation and staggering arrogance. He intended to stage a dramatic crisis to frame his ex-mistress and secure a legal victory. The entire police force realized they were hunting a predator who sacrificed his own family for a court advantage. The pieces of the twisted puzzle finally locked into place during the final interrogations. Michael Philpott masterminded the entire arson plot as a desperate theater production. He recruited his wife and his loyal friend to pour the petrol through the front door. The plan relied on the assumption that a small controllable fire would trigger the smoke alarms. Michael intended to rush up the rear ladder, smash a window, and pull the children to safety. He wanted the neighborhood to witness him playing the fearless hero, saving his family from an unprovoked attack. He planned to march into the custody hearing later that morning, pointing the finger at Lisa Willis. His immense ego convinced him he could control the destructive power of a liquid accelerant. The predator wore the mask of a protective father while lighting the match that sealed their fate. He viewed the lives sleeping upstairs as mere props in his grand manipulative scheme. The laws of physics and chemistry refused to cooperate with his reckless stunt. Petrol vapors expand outward, creating a massive volatile cloud in enclosed spaces. The moment the spark caught the fumes, the hallway erupted into an uncontrollable blast furnace. The plastic panels on the front door melted into a toxic dripping puddle within seconds. Thick, blinding smoke raced up the steep wooden staircase, cutting off all oxygen to the second floor. The intense heat drove Michael back, completely neutralizing his staged rescue attempt. The children trapped in the front bedrooms never stood a chance against the suffocating fumes. The arrogant patriarch stood helpless on the pavement, watching his grand illusion turn into an unimaginable nightmare. The fire consumed the home long before the first fire engine rounded the corner of Victory Road. The master manipulator engineered his own total destruction. The trial commenced in early 2013 at the Nottingham Crown Court. The prosecution laid out the staggering timeline of deception, forensic evidence, and covert recordings. The jury listened in stunned silence as the true depth of the psychological manipulation came to light. Michael Philpott stared straight ahead, maintaining his fabricated innocence despite the overwhelming proof. The jury deliberated and returned guilty verdicts for Michael Myred and Paul Mosley on 6 counts of manslaughter. The presiding judge delivered a scathing final assessment of the defendants. He labeled Michael a disturbingly dangerous man completely devoid of a moral compass. The court handed down a life sentence for the primary orchestrator of the tragedy. Myred and Paul each received 17 years in prison for their willing participation in the deadly scheme. The community of Allenton finally saw a measure of justice for the 6 innocent souls stolen from Victory Road. The legacy of this case forced a nationwide reckoning regarding systemic failures and housing benefit loopholes. Officials finally implemented stricter protocols for social workers handling complex, coercive control dynamics within multi-adult households. Michael remains firmly behind bars, his grandiose public persona reduced to a mere prison number. The justice system allowed his accomplices to secure controversial releases on license after serving a mandated portion of their sentences. Paul Mosley experienced a brief period of freedom before passing away in the year 2025. The former site of number 18 Victory Road now serves as a quiet, somber memorial garden. It stands as a tribute to the vibrant children who deserved a genuine protector instead of a predator. Their memory endures as a stark reminder of the ultimate cost of narcissistic greed, while the Allenton community tried to heal a different kind of horror surfaced across the Atlantic Ocean. In early 2014, commuters in Michigan stumbled upon strange garbage bags scattered along a quiet rural road, launching a frantic search for an elusive home invader. A freezing January wind whips across the desolate stretch of Fred Moore Highway in rural Michigan. Commuters drive past this quiet road every single morning without a second glance, unaware of the horrors hidden in the snow. Today, a motorist spots several heavy dark trash bags scattered haphazardly down the steep embankment. The dark plastic contrasts sharply with the pristine white snow, prompting the driver to pull over and investigate. Stepping out of the warm car, the motorist approaches the nearest bag. A foul, unmistakable odor hangs in the frigid air, defying the freezing temperatures. The driver tears open the plastic and recoils in sheer terror at the grim contents. Inside rests a devastating discovery that will soon launch a frantic search for an elusive masked home invader. Before the tragedy on the highway, the Stigvrito family lived a quiet life behind the closed doors of a suburban condominium. The residents sat on Roper Parkway in St. Clair Shores, a working-class neighborhood lined with small brick homes and neatly manicured lawns. Donna Strivo was a 60-year-old registered nurse who projected an image of a dedicated, selfless caregiver. She shared the modest two-story home with her 32-year-old son, Ramsey. Ramsey was a gentle, quiet man who battled severe mental health struggles, including a recent diagnosis of paranoia and psychosis. The community viewed Donna as a martyr, a weary mother sacrificing her golden years to care for her ailing child. She actively cultivated this perception, sharing her daily burdens with sympathetic neighbors over the low backyard fences, behind closed doors. However, a very different dynamic dominated the household. The reality of their shared existence was rooted in control, manipulation, and constant psychological friction. The legal system provided Donna with the ultimate weapon to completely dominate her son. Just months before the incident, Donna manipulated a local probate court into granting her full legal guardianship over Ramsey. The judge signed the paperwork based almost entirely on her professional credentials as a registered nurse, ignoring vital red flags. This specific legal loophole stripped Ramsey of his basic adult rights, trapping him under the absolute authority of a volatile caretaker. Ramsey desperately wanted independence, a chance to manage his own medication and live a normal adult life. Instead, he found himself confined to the small upstairs bedroom of the condominium. The physical layout of the home forced them into constant suffocating proximity. The narrow staircase connected Ramsey's private space directly to the ground floor living room where Donna held court. Arguments echoed through the thin drywall daily, turning the suburban sanctuary into a psychological prison for the troubled young man. He had absolutely no avenue of escape from her relentless oversight and strict rules. The fragile peace inside the Roper Parkway residence shattered completely on January 27, 2014. Donna walked into the local police precinct and filed a formal missing persons report for her son. She sat across from the desk sergeant, weeping and clutching a tissue in her trembling hands. According to her official statement, Ramsey had simply wandered away from their home the previous afternoon and never returned. She emphasized his mental health condition, painting a picture of a confused, vulnerable man lost in the freezing winter weather. Law enforcement immediately launched a search grid, broadcasting Ramsey's physical description across regional police channels. Officers scoured local parks, checked hospital intake logs, and canvassed the surrounding neighborhood for any signs of the young man. Neighbors expressed deep concern, organizing informal search parties to walk the icy sidewalks and hand out flyers. For 3 agonizing days, the community held on to hope for a safe return. No one suspected that the grieving mother sitting in the precinct was harboring a dark, terrifying secret. The illusion of a simple missing person case vanished when the motorist on Fred Moore Highway made that dreadful stop. First responders secured the desolate stretch of road in St. Clair County, located 50 miles north of the Stritto home. Crime scene technicians arrived to thoroughly document the scattered dark bags resting in the frozen grass. Inside the plastic, authorities identified the remains of a human being who had met a brutal, permanent end. Fingerprint analysis swiftly and definitively identified the victim as 32-year-old Ramsey Steedo. Detectives drove back to St. Clair Shores to deliver the devastating news to his supposedly grieving mother. When they arrived at the condominium, Donna unleashed a shocking new narrative that completely contradicted her initial missing persons report. She now claimed a terrifying masked home invader had orchestrated the entire nightmare inside her house. The terrifying assertion completely changed the trajectory of the local police response. The investigation pivoted instantly from a tragic search effort to a high-stakes hunt for a violent, armed intruder on the loose. Donna wove a complex, terrifying tale of captivity and violence occurring inside her own living room. She told detectives that a heavily armed man wearing a dark ski mask had broken into their home days earlier. According to her new statement, this phantom attacker held her hostage at gunpoint while he ended Ramsey's life. She claimed the intruder then forced her to transport the heavy bags in her own sport utility vehicle under the threat of severe harm. Detectives listened intently, documenting every detail of her harrowing story on their legal pads. However, the seasoned investigators immediately noticed glaring inconsistencies in her frantic timeline. The timeline simply did not match her previous visit to the precinct or her calm demeanor during the initial police report. They asked her to describe the weapon, the intruder's voice, and the exact method of entry into the locked condominium. Donna stumbled over these crucial details, offering vague descriptions and constantly shifting her answers. Every single question from the detectives seemed to generate a new, impossible contradiction in her story. Law enforcement officers requested permission to inspect the condominium for signs of forced entry or physical struggles. The physical geography of the home immediately struck the lead detectives as highly suspicious. The heavy wooden front door showed absolutely no signs of tampering. The deadbolt functioned perfectly, and the downstairs windows remained securely locked from the inside. Entering the main hallway, officers detected an overwhelming, sharp chemical odor burning their nostrils. Someone had recently scrubbed the entire first floor with industrial amounts of bleach and heavy-duty cleaners. Detectives found the living room completely devoid of the chaotic disarray, typical of a violent, chaotic home invasion. They stepped into the downstairs bathroom and noticed the linoleum floor gleaming with an unnatural pristine shine. The utter lack of physical evidence supporting a violent break-in deepened the suspicions of the investigative team. The phantom attacker theory began to unravel rapidly under the weight of strict logical scrutiny. The seasoned detectives realized they were standing in a meticulously sanitized crime scene, not a hostage location. Desperate to verify her claims, investigators began pulling surveillance video from local businesses along Donna's documented driving routes. They contacted a major hardware store located just a few miles from the Roper Parkway residence. Store managers handed over hours of digital footage from the afternoon of January 25th. Detectives sat in the windowless viewing room, carefully watching the grainy monitors for any sign of the masked captor following her. Instead, they watched Donna Stritto walk calmly through the automatic sliding doors completely alone. The security camera captured her pushing a shopping cart down the power tool aisle with deliberate, unhurried purpose. She paused, examined several boxes, and confidently selected a heavy-duty electric circular saw. The footage then showed her purchasing thick contractor-grade trash bags and industrial cleaning supplies at the checkout counter. No armed assailant stood behind her, and she made no attempt to alert the cashiers to any ongoing hostage situation. She appeared entirely relaxed, destroying the narrative of a terrified mother acting under the threat of a loaded weapon. The surveillance tapes provided the definitive proof needed to secure a comprehensive search warrant for the Drevoto residence. Crime scene technicians descended upon the condominium, equipped with forensic tools and chemical reagents designed to detect hidden stains. They focused their initial efforts on the downstairs bathroom, drawn by the lingering, overpowering smell of harsh bleach. A forensic specialist applied a specialized chemical compound to the base of the bathtub and the surrounding wooden trim. The area illuminated under the ultraviolet light, revealing a massive glowing map of human tragedy. Someone had meticulously wiped down the visible surfaces, but the fluids had seeped deeply into the microscopic cracks of the tile grout. Technicians unscrewed the metal drain cover and pulled up the edges of the adjacent carpet in the narrow hallway. Below the surface level, they found heavy crimson stains pooled heavily in the wooden subflooring. The undeniable forensic evidence proved that Ramsey had never left his home, and no masked stranger had ever entered it. The tragic reality emerged that the gentle son was betrayed in the exact location where he should have been safe. The horrifying reality of Ramsey's final moments crystallized as the medical examiner finalized the autopsy reports. Toxicological testing revealed massive lethal amounts of alprazolam coursing through the young man's system. Donna had utilized her decades of medical training as a registered nurse to heavily sedate her own vulnerable son. Once the medication rendered him completely defenseless, she leaned over him and crushed the breath from his lungs. The brutal betrayal occurred within the very walls that should have offered him safety and sanctuary. After ending his life, she retreated to the downstairs bathroom to systematically dismantle the evidence of her unthinkable crime. She turned the sterile environment of her home into a maggot workshop, utilizing the newly purchased electric saw. The loud mechanical screaming of the power tool echoed off the tiled walls, masking the absolute horror unfolding inside the suburban condominium. Ramsey met a terrifying end at the hands of the very person the state trusted to provide his care. Detectives confronted Donna in the interrogation room, presenting the towering stack of undeniable forensic and video evidence. The staccato rhythm of the interrogation escalated as investigators hammered away at her collapsing defensive walls. They placed the photographs of the hardware store receipt squarely on the cold metal table. They detailed the chemical findings glowing beneath the bathtub grout. They explained the lethal levels of sedatives found lingering in Ramsey's system. Donna's arrogant facade finally fractured under the crushing weight of the absolute truth. She stopped crying, her expression hardening into a chilling, emotionless mask. The phantom hostage taker never existed outside the dark corners of her own calculating mind. The ultimate predator was the very person entrusted by the state to protect a vulnerable young man. In the spring of 2015, Donna Scrito faced a jury of her peers in a Macomb County courtroom. The prosecution systematically dismantled her elaborate lies, presenting the tragic sequence of events with surgical precision. The jury listened in stunned silence as the medical examiner detailed the extent of the betrayal and the methodical disposal of the victim. The defense team attempted to shift the blame briefly, trying to suggest a temporary break from reality or a fugue state. The prosecution countered by highlighting the calculated trips to the hardware store and the meticulous hours-long cleaning of the crime scene. The legal loopholes that once allowed Donna to dominate Ramsey offered her no protection in the face of absolute forensic facts. After deliberating, the jury delivered a swift and definitive guilty verdict for first-degree premeditated taking of a life. They also convicted her of the unlawful alteration of a human form. Donna remained entirely stoic as the foreman read the decisions that would end her freedom forever. The presiding judge stared down from the bench, condemning Donna for the breathtaking cruelty she inflicted upon her own child. She received a mandatory sentence of life in prison without the possibility of parole, ensuring she would never breathe free air again. Ramsey Streeto finally received the justice he deserved, though the systemic failures that left him vulnerable remain a deeply tragic lesson. He is remembered by his community not for the horrific manner in which he departed, but for the gentle spirit he possessed in life. The quiet condominium on Roper Parkway stands as a silent monument to the ultimate betrayal of familial trust. The mask of the devoted caregiver slipped permanently, revealing the terrifying darkness hiding in plain sight. The elaborate lie of a home invasion failed to save a calculating predator from facing total accountability. The justice system finally recognized Ramsey as the true victim of a lifetime of manipulation and abuse. However, a mother fabricating an elaborate kidnapping to cover her tracks is a chilling tactic we are about to see repeated by a young woman down south. A frantic alert flashes across screens in Tennessee, desperately seeking a blonde-haired toddler whose smile captivated everyone she met. Authorities braced themselves for a rapid deployment, only to be hit with an unprecedented, chilling realization. The child in the photograph has already been missing for over 2 entire months. Her mother stands calmly before the flashing cameras, weaving a chaotic web of accusations against babysitters, family members, and mysterious strangers in an attempt to explain away the absence. The deception spirals out of control, revealing a labyrinth of lies designed to conceal an unthinkable betrayal. Sullivan County stretches across the northeastern corner of Tennessee, characterized by winding rural roads, dense Appalachian foothills, and tight-knit communities where everyone knows their neighbors. Within this quiet landscape lived Megan Boswell, a 19-year-old navigating the complexities of early motherhood. Megan presented a carefully curated image to the outside world, frequently posting bright photographs on social media to project the illusion of a perfect, deeply devoted parent. Her daughter was a lively 15-month-old named Evelyn, a child known for her bright blue eyes and infectious giggles. Beneath the digital facade, Megan led a highly unstable and transient life, frequently moving between different residences and relying heavily on a shifting network of acquaintances. The contrast between her public persona and private reality created a dangerous environment for the young girl relying on her for survival. Relatives watched with growing unease as Megan bounced from place to place, leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions about her daily routines. Evelyn spent her days caught in this chaotic whirlwind, lacking the stability essential for a growing toddler. The local community remained completely unaware of the looming shadow gathering over the young mother and her vulnerable child. Evelyn loved playing in the grass and interacting with family members during the rare moments of calm in her otherwise turbulent existence. Grandparents and extended relatives cherished their time with the little girl, always looking forward to her visits. However, as the bitter cold of December arrived, the visits abruptly ceased, replaced by evasive texts and vague excuses from Megan. The holidays came and went without a single glimpse of the blonde toddler, prompting quiet murmurs of concern among the family circle. Megan claimed she was overwhelmed with work and personal matters, assuring everyone that Evelyn was perfectly safe and well cared for. In reality, the teenager was isolating herself, severing the few remaining tethers holding her to accountable family members. Because there was no formal custody agreement or rigid court mandate forcing regular check-ins, the disjointed system allowed the child to simply slip through the cracks of society. Weeks drifted by in a silent void, while the people who loved Evelyn assumed she was merely out of town or busy with her mother. This devastating lack of oversight granted Megan the perfect cover to execute a prolonged campaign of deception. The tipping point finally arrived in February of the year 2020, triggered by a grandfather whose patience had completely evaporated. He contacted the Tennessee Department of Children's Services to report that he had not laid eyes on his granddaughter since early December. State caseworkers immediately recognized the severe red flags and requested local law enforcement to conduct a welfare check on the child. When investigators approached Megan to inquire about the whereabouts of her daughter, she did not display the frantic panic of a worried parent. Instead, she offered a perfectly rehearsed narrative, claiming she had entrusted Evelyn to a reliable babysitter weeks ago. According to her initial story, this caretaker lived in a silver camper at a distant campground located several counties away. Megan delivered these details with chilling calmness, providing specific descriptions of the vehicle to send detectives on a wild goose chase. The detectives deployed search teams to the rural campsites, expecting to find the toddler playing outside a shiny recreational vehicle. This marked the beginning of a deliberate psychological game designed to exhaust the resources of the very people trying to uncover the truth. Police cruisers scored the designated campgrounds, interviewing managers and checking every silver camper registered in the state database. The hours ticked by without a single trace of the missing caretaker, the vehicle, or the 15-month-old girl. Investigators returned to question the young mother, pointing out the glaring inconsistencies in her campground narrative. Without missing a beat, Megan abandoned her previous story entirely and pivoted to a brand new, highly elaborate conspiracy. She looked detectives directly in the eyes and accused her own mother of taking Evelyn across state lines. The audacity of this shift stunned veteran investigators, who now realized they were dealing with a master manipulator entirely detached from reality. Megan willingly sat down for local television interviews, crying invisible tears while publicly begging the supposed kidnappers to return her baby. She leveraged the media spotlight to cast herself as a tragic victim, weaponizing public sympathy to stall the investigation. Her shifting allegations consumed valuable time, exploiting the rigid protocols that forced police to investigate every single lead before officially dismissing it. Law enforcement found themselves trapped in a frustrating cycle of fabricated evidence and wasted manpower. Detectives spent weeks chasing down innocent individuals whom Megan arbitrarily named during her televised press conferences. Every time authorities disproved a theory, the teenager instantly supplied another suspect, ranging from distant relatives to random strangers she claimed to have met online. The local sheriff expressed visible frustration to the press, noting that the mother was single-handedly dismantling the progress of the entire search effort. Systemic jurisdictional hurdles complicated the matter further, as Megan claimed the child was moving through neighboring states. Police had to coordinate with federal agencies, filing extensive paperwork just to verify that the toddler was not crossing state boundaries. This administrative bottleneck gave the perpetrator an enormous advantage, creating a smokescreen while critical physical evidence remained hidden away. The public watched in sheer disbelief as a mother actively sabotaged the desperate hunt for her own flesh and blood. Behind closed doors, investigators began compiling a massive dossier of her contradictory statements, realizing that the key to the mystery lay solely in her deception. As February turned into March, the pressure surrounding the Sullivan County Sheriff's Office reached an absolute boiling point. Detectives meticulously mapped out the geographical timeline of Megan's movements between November and December of the previous year. They discovered she had traveled extensively between small rural properties owned by her extended family, bypassing major highways to avoid surveillance cameras. The physical landscape of the region, filled with dense woodlands and isolated outbuildings, provided countless hiding spots for a person seeking to conceal a dark secret. Investigators cross-referenced her cell phone data with the locations of her relatives, finding a distinct pattern that directly contradicted her media statements. When confronted with this digital evidence, Megan remained defiant, doubling down on the accusation that her own mother was orchestrating a massive cover-up. she attempted to exploit a fractured family dynamic, hoping the ensuing drama would distract the police from her own digital footprint. The investigators refused to take the bait, shifting their entire focus away from the phantom kidnappers and aiming it directly at the family properties. A judge reviewed the overwhelming proof of her continuous perjury and granted a comprehensive search warrant for a specific rural estate. The property in question belonged to Megan's family, situated at the end of a long, unpaved driveway flanked by barren winter trees. Several outbuildings dotted the sprawling lot, including an old, weathered shed located approximately 50 yards behind the main residence. Detectives arrived at the estate on a cold morning in early March, bringing specialized search teams and forensic evidence technicians. The atmosphere grew incredibly tense as deputies spread out across the overgrown yard, systematically checking every structure and abandoned vehicle on the premises. They worked with slow, deliberate precision, aware that the missing 15-month-old could be concealed in the most unassuming of places. Megan remained conspicuously silent during this massive deployment, offering no assistance to the officers tearing the property apart. The searchers moved past rusty farm equipment and stacks of decaying firewood, drawing closer to the wooden shed sitting quietly at the edge of the tree line. The heavy padlock on the shed door was cut away, echoing loudly across the silent rural landscape. The officers stepped into the dim, dusty interior, turning on their high-powered flashlights to illuminate the cramped space. Inside the shed, the air felt stagnant, thick with the smell of old motor oil, damp wood, and something far more sinister. The officers carefully navigated around stacks of forgotten belongings, their flashlights sweeping over cardboard boxes and discarded household items. Tucked away in a dark corner stood a large ordinary trash can, seemingly out of place among the mechanical debris. A seasoned evidence technician approached the container, noticing that it appeared deliberately concealed behind a wall of old tires. The team slowly opened the lid, revealing a series of heavy blankets tightly packed into the cylindrical space. Beneath the thick fabric layers, they found something wrapped meticulously in shining aluminum foil. The extreme lengths taken to hide the contents immediately signaled to the search team that the hunt for the missing toddler had reached its devastating conclusion. The officers paused, allowing the heavy weight of the moment to settle over the crime scene before proceeding. They carefully documented the spatial arrangement of the items, capturing every angle on camera to ensure an airtight chain of custody. Upon unwrapping the layers of foil and fabric, authorities made a grim discovery that shattered the hearts of the entire community. The vibrant little girl with bright blue eyes had met a brutal permanent end, discarded like refuse in the shadows of a neglected outbuilding. Forensic experts immediately secured the perimeter, restricting access to prevent any cross-contamination of the delicate scene. The calculated manner in which the child was concealed proved that this was not a tragic, momentary accident, but a deliberate act of concealment. Megan had spent over 2 months living a normal life, giving interviews and smiling for cameras, fully aware of what sat rotting inside that trash can. The sheer arrogance of her performance disgusted the veteran detectives who had spent weeks chasing her phantom babysitters across the state. They realized the elaborate web of lies was constructed solely to buy time, hoping the elements would eventually erase all physical evidence. Justice, however, was finally closing in, fueled by undeniable physical proof that no television interview could ever explain away. With the undeniable physical evidence secured, the state immediately moved to end the charade once and for all. Authorities placed Megan Boswell under arrest, stripping away her arrogant facade and replacing her fashionable clothes with a standard jail uniform. She sat in the interrogation room, finally stripped of her ability to manipulate the narrative through her carefully crafted social media presence. The prosecutors methodically built a fortress of a case against her, combining the cell phone data, the repeated false reports, and the chilling contents of the rural shed. They charged her with severe counts of child abuse, false reporting, and the ultimate, unpardonable crime against a child. The community that had desperately searched for the little girl now directed its profound grief into a demand for absolute accountability. Megan attempted to file numerous legal motions to delay the proceedings, utilizing every possible legal loophole to stall her inevitable reckoning. Despite her desperate maneuvers, the court remained steadfast, refusing to grant bail to a person who had proven completely incapable of telling the truth. The trial date was set, ensuring the disgraced mother would face a jury of the same peers she had deceived for months. The courtroom in Sullivan County became the final stage where Megan could no longer hide behind phantom attackers. Prosecutors laid out the agonizing timeline, displaying photographs of the trash can and detailing the profound betrayal committed by the one person meant to protect the child. The defense scrambled to introduce reasonable doubt, but the sheer volume of shifting stories Megan had told the press became her own undoing. Witnesses took the stand to recount the teenager's erratic behavior, contrasting it with the memory of the sweet, innocent toddler whose life was stolen. The jury listened in stunned silence as the state dismantled the final remnants of the Silver Camper story, proving it was a desperate fiction born of guilt. It took the jury very little time to deliberate, returning to the courtroom with a verdict that resonated through the quiet Tennessee town. The judge read the decision aloud, confirming that the master manipulator had finally run out of lies. She was found guilty on all counts, cementing her legacy not as a tragic victim, but as a cold, calculating predator. In February of the year 2025, Megan Boswell faced the ultimate consequences of her horrific deception. The judge did not mince words, condemning her for the prolonged psychological torture she inflicted upon the family and the local community. She received a mandatory life sentence for the loss of her daughter, ensuring she would never again walk free among the public. The legal system, though initially hindered by her endless falsehoods, ultimately functioned exactly as intended to deliver undeniable justice for Evelyn. The family of the little girl finally received closure, though the scars of the betrayal would linger for generations to come. They organized memorials to honor the bright blue-eyed toddler, ensuring her memory would be defined by love rather than the darkness of her final days. The community dismantled the makeshift memorials outside the courthouse, finding a small measure of peace in the finality of the severe verdict. The authorities used the tragedy to advocate for stricter welfare check protocols, hoping to close the societal gaps that allowed a child to vanish silently. The hammer of justice struck a final blow in September of the year 2025, when the court reconvened to address the remaining charges of false reporting and abuse. The judge added 33 consecutive years to her life sentence, a symbolic and literal guarantee that her punishment would far outlast her natural life. This additional penalty sent a powerful message to the public that manipulating the authorities and wasting vital emergency resources carries a devastating price. The rural shed where the grim discovery occurred was eventually cleared away, leaving only an empty patch of earth in the quiet Tennessee hills. Evelyn's story serves as a haunting reminder of the monsters who hide behind a smiling public facade, seamlessly blending into everyday society. While this particular nightmare ended behind the heavy steel doors of a state penitentiary, the terrifying reality is that some parents will go to even more extreme lengths to cover their tracks. In fact, a frantic emergency call in New Jersey would soon prove that not all horrors are hidden in abandoned sheds. Some are concealed in the depths of a desolate wooded creek. A frantic 911 call pierces the quiet autumn morning in suburban New Jersey. A young father claims his 3-year-old son has inexplicably vanished from a locked second-story apartment. Law enforcement rushes to the scene, expecting to find a wandering toddler who simply slipped away into the neighborhood. Hours later, K9 units track a faint scent away from the paved sidewalks, pulling handlers down a steep, treacherous embankment toward a desolate, wooded creek. The dogs stop at the water edge. The illusion of a simple missing child case evaporates in the damp morning air, replaced by the chilling reality of a predator operating within the home. Haddon Township, New Jersey, is a quiet community characterized by neatly trimmed lawns, brick-faced storefronts, and a sense of enduring safety. Sodium streetlights cast long shadows over Cooper Street, where David Creato Jr. rented a modest second-story apartment. David shared custody of his 3-year-old son Brendan with the boy's mother. Brendan was a joyful, energetic child who loved playing with his toy cars and wearing his favorite superhero pajamas. The toddler relied entirely on the adults in his life for protection, routine, and care. His world consisted of weekend visits, familiar cartoon shows, and the comforting boundaries of his small bedroom. David worked at a family-owned business nearby, projecting the image of a responsible, dedicated young father navigating the challenges of co-parenting. Neighbors often saw the two walking together to local parks during the crisp autumn afternoons. Behind the facade of this ordinary suburban life, a toxic and consuming dynamic had taken root. David was entangled in an intense romantic relationship with Julia Stodd, a 17-year-old who harbored deep resentment toward his child. Julia viewed Brendan not as a young boy, but as an intolerable obstacle to her future with David. The digital footprint of their relationship revealed a volatile, obsessive connection built on ultimatums and demands for isolation. She openly expressed immense disdain for the time David spent fulfilling his parental duties. The teenage girl frequently threatened to sever the relationship entirely unless David relinquished his custody rights. David faced a profound internal fracture, torn between his fundamental obligation to his son and his desperation to keep his young girlfriend. He systematically chose to appease Julia, prioritizing her demands over the safety and well-being of a child who could not defend himself. The night of October 12, 2015, settled over Cooper Street with a heavy, undisturbed quiet. The geography of the apartment is crucial to understanding the impossibility of the narrative that followed. David lived on the second floor, accessible only by a steep, enclosed wooden staircase. The front door featured a heavy deadbolt lock positioned high above the reach of an average 3-year-old. Outside, the streets stretched into darkness, flanked by busy avenues and dense patches of woods leading toward the Cooper River. At 6 o'clock the following morning, David dialed emergency dispatchers with a story designed to deflect all suspicion. He claimed he woke up to find Brendan missing from the apartment. David suggested the toddler had somehow manipulated the complex locks, navigated the steep stairs in the dark, and wandered out into the chilling October night. First responders arrived at the apartment complex within minutes, initiating a massive grid search of the immediate neighborhood. Officers knocked on doors, checked backyard sheds, and scoured nearby playgrounds operating under the assumption of a wandering child. The timeline presented by David felt fundamentally flawed to veteran investigators right from the start. A 3-year-old boy lacking basic spatial awareness would not logically undertake a silent, complex escape in the pitch black without alerting anyone. Furthermore, the high deadbolt remained perfectly intact, showing no signs of forced entry by an outside intruder. David paced his living room, maintaining his claim that a mystery attacker must have snatched the boy, or that the child vanished on his own. As dawn broke, the desperate search expanded beyond the paved streets and into the dense, unforgiving terrain surrounding the township. The community held on to hope, plastering flyers across telephone poles, completely unaware that the boy's fate had already been sealed hours before the first police siren wailed. By 9 o'clock that morning, the investigation shifted from the suburban sidewalks to a desolate area of the Cooper River Park woods. This location sat approximately 3/4 of a mile away from the Cooper Street apartment. The terrain here featured a steep 60-foot descending embankment choked with thick briars, jagged rocks, and uneven muddy ground. K-9 units caught a scent trail leading away from the roads and down this treacherous slope toward a shallow, murky creek. At the edge of the water, searchers made a grim discovery that brought the entire operation to a standstill. Brendan lay submerged in the dark water, still wearing his pajamas. The visual reality of the scene immediately contradicted the father's narrative of a wandering child. Investigators noted one glaring, undeniable physical detail that completely shattered the wandering theory. Brendan wore pristine white socks. The white socks lacked any trace of dirt, mud, or tearing, an absolute physical impossibility if the boy had walked 3/4 of a mile through urban streets and a dense, muddy forest. The bottoms of the boy's feet showed 0 scratches, bruises, or signs of trauma from navigating jagged rocks and briars in the dark. Law enforcement immediately recognized that someone had carried the child to this remote location and placed him in the water. The investigation pivoted inward, focusing intensely on the occupants of the second-story apartment. Detectives secured the residence, treating it as the primary scene of a covert and silent tragedy. They began a methodical reconstruction of David Creato Jr.'s exact movements during the 48 hours leading up to the 911 call. Forensic teams extracted cellular data aiming to map the digital and physical footprint of the father. The silence of the apartment contrasted sharply with the deafening volume of evidence recovered from the cell phones. Digital forensics provided a clear, unobstructed window into the psychological state of both David and his teenage girlfriend. Detectives uncovered thousands of text messages documenting a relentless campaign of emotional manipulation. Julia routinely demanded that David give up custody of Brendan, stating explicitly that she despised the child's presence in their lives. In one exchange, she commanded him to choose between her and his son. David responded with desperate reassurances, promising he would find a way to resolve the situation and secure their future together. He even suggested he might try to arrange for his parents to take full custody, a proposition his family firmly rejected. The pressure from Julia escalated dramatically in the weeks preceding October 12. She barred David from bringing the boy to her residence and expressed extreme hostility whenever Brendan was scheduled to visit his father. Detectives also examined the suspect's internet history, revealing a disturbing fascination with the exact geographical area where the boy was discovered. A Tumblr account linked to the investigation contained photographs of the specific creek, taken weeks before the incident. This established a premeditated familiarity with the remote dumping ground. Investigators built a meticulous timeline, matching cell phone pings to physical locations. On the night in question, David's phone connected to a tower, covering the wooded park area at 1:30 in the morning. This crucial electronic handshake placed him away from his apartment and at the creek precisely during the window of time Brendan vanished. The father had claimed he was asleep in his bed the entire night. The digital evidence proved he was awake, mobile, and traversing the exact path where the dogs later tracked the scent. Despite the mountain of circumstantial evidence, the legal system required absolute medical certainty to proceed with an indictment. The autopsy presented a profound forensic challenge. The medical examiner found no obvious signs of blunt force trauma, no weapons, and no clear indicators of a struggle. This lack of over-physical damage initially slowed the momentum of the prosecution, creating a frustrating gap in the official record. Authorities sent tissue samples to neuropathologists to examine the brain for subtle signs of oxygen deprivation. The empty spaces in the investigation dragged on for 3 grueling months, during which David remained free, continuing to blame an unknown kidnapper. Detectives refused to let the case turn cold, meticulously re-interviewing witnesses and solidifying the cellular tracking data. They knew the pristine white socks and the cellular pings formed an unbreakable chain of logic, even as they waited for science to catch up. The final piece of the puzzle arrived when Dr. Gerald Fiji, the county medical examiner, officially ruled the death a result of homicidal violence. The forensic analysis concluded that Brendan suffered from hypoxia, a fatal deprivation of oxygen, before he ever entered the cold water of the creek. The predator had silenced the child inside the familiar safety of the second-story apartment using a method designed to leave minimal physical marks. Smothering a sleeping toddler requires immense physical dominance and a complete absence of empathy. Following the fatal act, David carried the boy down the steep wooden stairs, past the heavy deadbolt, and into the night. He walked the 3/4 of a mile in the dark, navigating the treacherous 60-foot embankment with his son's body in his arms. He then placed the boy in the shallow water, attempting to stage a drowning or a random outdoor exposure event. Authorities arrested David Creado Jr. in January 2016, dismantling his arrogant assumption that he had committed a perfect, untraceable act. The trial commenced, bringing the horrifying reality of the crime into the stark fluorescent lighting of the courtroom. Prosecutors laid out the agonizing timeline, contrasting the innocent life of a 3-year-old with the cold, calculated desires of his father. They displayed the pristine white socks to the jury, cementing the physical impossibility of the defense's wandering child theory. The defense attempted to introduce reasonable doubt, clinging to the phantom intruder narrative and challenging the medical examiner's findings. They pointed fingers at the girlfriend, suggesting she possessed the motive, though she was away at college on the night in question. The state maintained focus on the man who held ultimate responsibility, the father who traded his child's future for the approval of a teenager. Despite the overwhelming digital and forensic evidence, the initial trial exposed a deeply frustrating reality of the legal system. In May 2017, the jury announced they were hopelessly deadlocked, unable to reach a unanimous verdict after days of deliberation. The judge declared a mistrial, forcing the victim's family to face the agonizing prospect of reliving the entire traumatic process. This systemic failure highlighted the immense difficulty of prosecuting cases relying heavily on circumstantial data and complex medical pathology. However, the prosecution refused to concede, immediately announcing their intention to retry the case with even greater focus. Facing the absolute certainty of a second trial and the prospect of spending his entire life behind bars, David's resolve finally shattered. He abandoned the mystery attacker narrative that he had maintained for nearly 2 years. In August 2017, David Creado Jr. accepted a plea agreement, pleading guilty to aggravated manslaughter. He stood before the court and stated under oath that he recklessly caused the end of his son's life by depriving him of oxygen. The judge sentenced him to 10 years in New Jersey State Prison, requiring him to serve at least 8.5 years before parole eligibility. The sentence brought a measure of legal finality, though it could never restore the vibrant young boy who loved superhero pajamas and toy cars. Julia Stott never faced criminal charges, as the law required definitive proof of active participation in the act itself, rather than mere emotional manipulation. The resolution closed a dark chapter in Haddon Township, leaving a lingering chill regarding the true nature of the people living next door. While one father went to extreme calculated lengths to permanently discard his own flesh and blood, another set of parents in Indiana engineered a completely different kind of abandonment by claiming their child was an imposter. A young girl with severe dwarfism lives isolated inside a second-floor apartment in Lafayette, Indiana, relying entirely on the kindness of neighbors to open food cans and reach the kitchen sink. As she struggles through each day of 2013, her adoptive parents appear on television screens miles away, They sit under bright studio lights looking directly into the camera and claim they did not abandon a vulnerable child. Instead, they tell the world they barely escaped a violent adult sociopath masquerading as a little girl to destroy their family. The sprawling, manicured suburbs of Westfield, Indiana, provided the perfect backdrop for a family obsessed with their public image. The Barnett residence stood as a massive colonial structure at the end of a long driveway, shaded by tall oak trees and surrounded by pristine lawns. Michael and Christine Barnett presented a flawless facade of suburban success. Christine worked as a published author and ran a daycare facility out of her home. She positioned herself as a visionary expert on child development, writing books on how to raise exceptional children. The local community viewed her as a beacon of maternal sacrifice. Her husband, Michael, worked in retail management, supporting his wife's grand ambitions. Together, they projected an aura of absolute control, boundless generosity, and moral superiority. In the year 2010, the couple traveled to Florida to finalize an emergency adoption. They received Natalia Grace, an orphan born in Ukraine. Natalia lived with spondyloepiphyseal dysplasia congenita, a rare genetic disorder that affects bone growth. The condition results in severe dwarfism, chronic joint pain, and significant mobility challenges. Prior to meeting the Barnetts, Natalia resided in a stark Ukrainian orphanage, waiting for a real family to take her home. She loved drawing colorful pictures, playing with dolls, and wanted nothing more than a stable environment. She arrived at the massive Westfield estate, carrying only a few small bags, hoping to finally experience the warmth of a loving mother and father. The transition into the sprawling house quickly revealed a harsh reality. Behind the heavy wooden doors of the Westfield estate, the perfect public facade began to crack. Christine demanded absolute perfection and strict obedience from all her children. Natalia struggled to navigate the vast distances of the multi-level home due to her physical limitations. Her condition required multiple complex surgeries, casting a heavy financial toll and demanding intense daily care. The atmosphere inside the residence turned freezing cold. The initial warmth of the adoption vanished, replaced by rigid rules and harsh punishments. The parents began treating the young girl as an intolerable burden rather than a daughter in need of protection. The psychological campaign began in late 2011. Christine started planting bizarre seeds of doubt among her neighbors, friends, and local medical professionals. She whispered that Natalia was not a child at all, but an adult imposter. She claimed the girl hid dangerous objects around the house and poured household chemicals into coffee cups. No official police reports exist from this time regarding these extreme allegations. Instead of seeking law enforcement intervention, the parents forced the child to stand facing walls for hours as punishment for perceived infractions. Natalia internalized this relentless psychological torture. She listened to her own caregivers call her a monster, slowly breaking her spirit. In June 2012, the parents executed a staggering legal maneuver inside a Marion County courtroom. They submitted a formal petition to alter Natalia's vital records permanently. The legal document requested a change of her birth year from 2003 to 1989. The judge reviewed a single highly disputed letter from a primary care physician who questioned her age. The court did not require Natalia to attend the hearing. The judge did not order an independent bone density scan, nor did he request an endocrinology review to verify the claims. With the simple strike of a pen, the legal system transformed an 8-year-old disabled child into a 22-year-old adult. Armed with this new legal shield, the parents orchestrated their final exit in July 2013. The geography of the story shifted an hour north to Lafayette, Indiana. The Barnetts selected a grim brick apartment complex situated near a busy commercial district. They signed a 1-year lease on a second-floor unit. They transported the disabled child to this isolated location away from anyone she knew. They paid the rent for a short period, left a few basic supplies on the counter, and walked out the door. Michael and Christine then packed up their remaining family and moved across the border to Canada, abandoning Natalia. Natalia faced an impossible daily struggle for basic survival. The rented apartment sat at the top of a steep, narrow flight of wooden stairs, presenting a massive physical obstacle for a person with severe joint pain. The physical dimensions of the living space catered strictly to average-sized adults. Natalia could not reach the kitchen countertops to prepare meals. She could not access the control dials on the washing machine or reach the shelves inside the refrigerator. Neighbors watched a tiny figure struggling with all her might to push open the heavy glass doors of the local grocery store. Residents in the complex began stepping in to help her open tin cans and carry laundry up the steps. They quickly realized this person possessed the emotional maturity, fears, and vocabulary of a terrified elementary school student, not a grown woman. By September 2014, the situation reached a breaking point. A local school principal and county police officers intervened after hearing whispers about the girl living alone. Detectives crossed the threshold of the Lafayette apartment and documented the grim reality. They noted the sparse furnishings, the out-of-reach appliances, and the overwhelming sense of isolation. The physical evidence of a child left to fend for herself filled the room. Investigators traced the apartment lease directly back to Michael Barnett. Law enforcement officers began untangling the complex web of paperwork left behind. They soon hit a massive, unprecedented legal roadblock constructed by the Marion County Court. A jurisdictional nightmare paralyzed the local prosecutors. The Lafayette police attempted to file criminal charges for the neglect of a dependent child. The state statutes required the victim to be legally recognized as a minor to apply these specific charges. The prosecutors faced the immovable reality of the 2012 court order, because a judge in a different county officially changed her birth year. Lafayette authorities could not legally classify Natalia as a child. This rigid legal barrier forced the investigation into a standstill. The state protocols conflicted directly with the physical reality standing right in front of the detectives. To bypass this legal shield, investigators dove deep into the medical archives. Detectives located the original skeletal surveys conducted in 2010. Pediatric dentist confirmed Natalia possessed baby teeth at the time of her adoption. Specialists at a children's hospital provided records showing her bone development matched a young prepubescent girl. Despite this overwhelming physical evidence, the appellate courts refused to overturn the 2012 age change ruling. The justice system chose to protect the sanctity of its own paperwork over the safety of a vulnerable human being. While the legal system stalled, Kristen launched a massive media offensive. The Barnetts secured interviews on prominent national television programs. They sat on brightly lit studio coaches, projecting an image of traumatized victims who barely survived a horror movie. They wove a chilling narrative about a dangerous adult sociopath attempting to push them into electric fences and harm their other children. Natalia sat in her new temporary housing, forced to watch her adoptive parents destroy her character on television. This calculated public relations campaign served as a devastating form of psychological warfare. The parents used the media to solidify their defense and poison the jury pool before a trial could even begin. The daily grind of the investigation continued for 5 agonizing years. Detectives refused to close the file despite the immense legal pressure and media circus. They pivoted their legal strategy, realizing they could not win the battle over her legally documented age. They decided to pursue charges based on the neglect of a disabled adult instead. Investigators gathered financial records showing the Barnetts withheld essential medical care while living in Canada. They compiled statements from the neighbors who witnessed the daily struggles in the Lafayette apartment. The slow, meticulous gathering of circumstantial evidence built a foundation strong enough to challenge the parents in a criminal court. In September 2019, the authorities made their move. Prosecutors in Ticonderoga County issued formal arrest warrants for Michael and Christine Barnett. The couple returned from out of state to surrender to law enforcement. The flawless public facade shattered as they processed through the county jail, exchanging their tailored clothes for inmate uniforms. Investigators presented a trove of digital evidence during the pre-trial hearings. They revealed internal emails where Michael discussed Natalia's young age, contradicting their public claims. The walls closed in on the parents as the physical evidence dismantled every terrifying story they told on national television. The courtroom transformed into a battleground over objective reality. The defense attorneys clung to the Marion County age change document as their absolute shield. They argued that the parents had no legal obligation to care for a 22-year-old adult, regardless of her physical stature. The prosecution countered by presenting the medical professionals who treated Natalia. They called the Lafayette neighbors to the stand to describe the childlike terror they witnessed in the apartment complex. The trial exposed the sheer absurdity of the adult sociopath narrative. The undeniable truth emerged that the parents orchestrated the entire elaborate scheme to escape the financial and emotional burden of raising a disabled child. The legal conclusion delivered an infuriating blow to justice in October 2022. A jury acquitted Michael Barnett of all criminal neglect charges. The presiding judge instructed the jury that they must accept the legally established age of 22, tying the hands of the prosecution. A few months later, prosecutors dismissed the remaining charges against Christine due to complex statute of limitations rules. The rigid protocols and jurisdictional conflicts of the Indiana legal system created an impenetrable shield for the parents. A simple piece of signed paper successfully overrode the objective reality of medical science. Despite the failure of the criminal courts, the court of public opinion issued a definitive verdict. The fabricated horror story spun by the Barnetts faced total rejection from documentary filmmakers and investigative journalists. Natalia found permanent sanctuary with a new, loving family. The mans who provided the stability and medical care she always required. She reclaimed her own narrative, speaking out to expose the systematic abuse she endured in the Westfield house. But while one young girl escaped a bizarre nightmare orchestrated by her own family, another mother in Florida spun a very different web of lies, pointing the finger at a mysterious phantom nanny to explain the sudden disappearance of her own little girl. July 2008 brings a sweltering heat to Orlando, Florida, but the chill inside the police dispatch center is absolute. A frantic grandmother places a hysterical emergency call, her voice cracking as she reports her 2-year-old granddaughter missing for 31 days. The dispatcher listens in stunned silence as the woman describes a foul, unmistakable odor radiating from the trunk of her daughter's abandoned white Pontiac Sunfire. Detectives arrive to find a young mother standing in the driveway, displaying zero emotion. She points the finger at a mysterious nanny named Zanita, setting off a nationwide panic. The Anthony family lived in a single-story beige stucco house on Hope Spring Drive in a quiet, working-class neighborhood of Orlando, Florida. Tall oak trees cast long shadows over the manicured lawn, projecting an image of pristine suburban stability. Inside the home, 22-year-old Casey Anthony operated a complex web of fabrication. She lived rent-free with her parents, George and Cindy Anthony, while raising her vibrant 2-year-old daughter, Kaylee. Kylie was the center of her grandparents' universe, a bright-eyed toddler who memorized songs and loved sitting in her grandfather's lap reading picture books. To the outside world, Casey projected the image of a successful event planner working a lucrative job at Universal Studios. She dressed in sharp business attire every morning, kissed her parents goodbye, and drove off into the Florida humidity. Behind this pristine facade, a deeply rooted pattern of deception controlled every aspect of her existence. Casey lacked actual employment, spending her days wandering shopping malls or lounging at friends' apartments. She maintained a vast network of acquaintances, frequenting vibrant nightclubs in downtown Orlando and entering local hot body contests. She forged documents, creating fake schedules and imaginary coworkers to keep her parents trapped in the dark. Kylie spent her days dependent on a mother who prioritized social status over maternal responsibility. The child knew nothing of the tension brewing beneath the roof of the Hope Spring Drive house. George and Cindy noticed small inconsistencies, questioning missing money and unreturned phone calls. Casey countered their suspicions with aggressive defiance, using the child as a shield to deflect criticism. The illusion of a happy family shattered under the weight of these mounting invisible pressures. The geographical setup of Casey's double life required intense daily management. The drive from the family home to downtown Orlando took roughly 20 minutes, a physical distance Casey used to separate her identities. She kept a change of party clothes hidden in her vehicle, swapping out her professional attire in parking lots. Her parents trusted the natural order of things, believing their daughter possessed basic human empathy and common sense. They funded her lifestyle, unaware that the imaginary Universal Studios job served as a hollow cover story. This psychological blind spot allowed a predator to manipulate the environment from the inside. The trap tightened around a 2-year-old child who had no voice and no escape route. The breaking point arrives on July 15, 2008, exactly 31 days after anyone last saw Kaylee alive. Cindy Anthony receives a certified letter stating that Casey's white Pontiac Sunfire sits in a local tow yard. George Anthony drives across town to retrieve the vehicle, expecting a simple administrative misunderstanding. He steps onto the hot asphalt of the impound lot and unlocks the driver's side door. A heavy, noxious wave of air hits his face, carrying a specific, horrifying scent that George recognizes from his past career in law enforcement. He drives the car back to Hope Spring Drive with the windows rolled down, his mind racing with terrifying possibilities. Cindy opens the trunk in their driveway, finding only a stray bag of trash, but the odor remains embedded in the upholstery. She demands answers from her daughter, forcing a confrontation that initiates the formal police response. Cindy dials 911, her voice echoing through the quiet suburban street as she demands police intervention. First responders arrive and separate the family members, placing Casey in the back of a patrol cruiser. Detectives press the young mother for the exact location of the 2-year-old child. Casey looks the investigators in the eyes and delivers a detailed, fabricated narrative without a single stutter. She claims an elusive nanny named Zenita Fernandez Gonzalez abducted the child in mid-June. She provides physical descriptions, imaginary apartment numbers, and a complete backstory for this phantom kidnapper. Investigators launch a high-stakes search protocol, believing a dangerous predator holds a vulnerable toddler captive in the surrounding city. The search for Zenita Fernandez Gonzalez consumes the entire region, mobilizing hundreds of volunteers and draining police resources. Detectives scour apartment complexes, run background checks, and chase down every lead matching the nanny's description. The investigation teams comb through public records, searching for any historical trace of this mysterious caregiver. They locate a woman sharing the exact name living just a few miles away from the Anthony home. Investigators bring this woman in for intense questioning, placing an innocent citizen under extreme psychological pressure. The real Zenita possesses airtight allies, having never met Casey Anthony or stepped foot near Hope Spring Drive. Police realize the suspect is an absolute phantom, a convenient ghost conjured to mask a domestic nightmare. The focus shifts back to the mother, who continues to sit in a sterile interrogation room, spinning new layers of deception. The desperate search for a living child transforms into a grim excavation of a mother's hidden life. Law enforcement officials execute a search warrant on the Pontiac Sunfire, transporting the vehicle to a specialized forensic bay. Technicians open the trunk, documenting a severe biological stain on the carpet lining. They utilize experimental air sampling technology, sealing the vehicle and extracting the trapped gases for chemical analysis. The specialized laboratory in Tennessee receives the samples and runs them through a gas chromatograph mass spectrometer. The results return a devastating scientific truth. The air contains distinct chemical compounds that only exist during the active breakdown of biological matter. The analysts isolate unusually high levels of chloroform, a chemical agent used to render humans unconscious. This precise forensic data anchors the investigation, proving the vehicle served as a mobile tomb rather than an ordinary mode of transport. Detectives reconstruct Casey's movements during the 31 days of the child's disappearance. They pull cell phone tower data mapping her geographical coordinates across the city of Orlando. The records place her at local nightclubs, house parties, and shopping centers while her parents frantically searched for the child. Surveillance cameras capture her wandering the aisles of a Blockbuster video store browsing movie titles. She visits a local tattoo parlor, spending hours in the artist's chair to receive a permanent inking. The artist etches the Italian phrase Bella Vita onto her shoulder, translating to beautiful life. She moves into the apartment of her new boyfriend, Tony Lazzaro, abandoning her vehicle in an obscure parking lot. Every verified action demonstrates a profound, chilling detachment from the terrifying reality unfolding around her. The investigation hits a surreal climax of deception during a scheduled walkthrough of Universal Studios. Casey agrees to lead detectives to her supposed office, claiming her co-workers can verify her story. The investigative team follows her through the sprawling corporate campus, walking down long, fluorescent-lit hallways. She marches past executive suites and conference rooms, her confidence never wavering for a single second. The detectives walk silently behind her, knowing the employment records already prove she lost her job 2 years prior. They reach a dead end at the back of the building, the physical walls mirroring her collapsing narrative. Casey turns around, crosses her arms, and admits she does not work at the facility. She offers no apology, merely shifting the conversation to another set of fabricated details. The legal system struggles to contain her, as jurisdictional protocols and the lack of a physical crime scene prevent severe charges. The prosecution builds a circumstantial puzzle, waiting desperately for the Florida wilderness to reveal its dark secrets. December 11, 2008 brings a sharp chill to the air in Orange County, Florida. A wooded, swampy lot sits on Suburban Drive, located exactly 1/4 of a mile from the Anthony family home. The dense vegetation and murky water create a natural barrier, hiding discarded debris from the passing traffic. A local utility worker named Roy Kronick steps into the tree line to check a hidden water meter. His boot strikes a heavy dark plastic bag submerged in the wet soil. He uses his measuring stick to lift the edge of the plastic, revealing a horrific sight beneath the vines. He steps back, pulling his radio to call local authorities to the isolated perimeter. Crime scene investigators swarm the desolate patch of woods, stringing yellow tape across the damp brush. They peel back the layers of heavy blankets and dark trash bags inside. They find the tragic, undeniable conclusion of the 6-month search. The remains belong to a small child bound at the face with multiple layers of silver duct tape. The placement of the tape across the nose and mouth area signals a deliberate, terrifying final act. This location shatters the entire kidnapping narrative in a single moment. A random abductor does not travel across the city just to hide the evidence a mere block away from the victim's own bed. The proximity points back to the house on Hope Spring Drive. The phantom nanny vanishes into the Florida air, leaving only the devastating reality of a betrayed child. The trial commences in 2011, capturing the undivided attention of the entire nation. The prosecution presents the timeline, the forensic air samples, and the undeniable web of lies. The defense counters with an aggressive strategy, claiming the tragedy resulted from a household accident and subsequent panic. They exploit the lack of a definitive recorded cause of passing, casting a shadow of reasonable doubt over the jury. The rigid rules of the legal system require absolute certainty for the most severe penalties. On July 5, 2011, the jury delivers a verdict that stuns the watching world. Casey Anthony is cleared of the most severe charges, finding her guilty only of providing false information to law enforcement officers. The public outrage explodes, viewing the verdict as a monumental failure of the justice system. Protesters gather outside the courthouse chanting for a vanished child who never received her day in court. The legal loophole surrounding the exact cause of the tragedy allowed a master manipulator to walk out of the building. Kaylee Anthony lost her future, silenced by the person tasked with ensuring her safety. The case remains a permanent scar on the history of American jurisprudence. It stands as a chilling reminder of how a domestic predator can weaponize a false narrative. We must now turn our attention to the final reflections on these tragic illusions. These devastating cases expose a terrifying reality about the monsters living inside our own homes. Parents who project their unthinkable guilt onto phantom suspects manipulate our natural fear of strangers to mask their own ultimate betrayals. Thank you for watching. Click the video on your screen to explore another deep dive into the shadows of true crime. These cases reveal a calculated betrayal of the most sacred trust. These individuals weaponized the fear of a mysterious stranger to camouflage their own actions. They invented monsters in the shadows to hide the darkness within the home. The most dangerous threats do not always arrive from the outside. Thank you for watching. Select the video on your screen for more analysis.